So good evening, everyone. Welcome to January 12th City Council meeting. In attendance this evening, we have, in no particular order, I'm just going to read from my left to my right on my screen. We have Councillor Pett, Councillor LeBlanc, Councillor Gilman, Councillor Cox, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Holmgren, Councillor Memhard, Councillor O'Hara, Councillor Nolan. Also in attendance, we have our Mayor Taken. We have our Police Chief, Ed Connolly. We have our City Clerk, Joanne Sinos. We have our Health Director, or Karen, what is your official title? I'm sorry.
Public Health Director for the City of Gloucester.
Public Health Director, Karen Carroll. Let's see here. We have our acting CAO, or our assistant CAO, Vanessa Krozik, and we have our new CAO, transitioning CAO, Nicole Kaiser. So welcome, Nicole, to our first City Council meeting. I hope you enjoy it. So this meeting is being recorded by video and audio in accordance with the state open meeting law, consistent with the governor's orders suspending certain provisions under the open meeting law and having gatherings of more than 10 people. This meeting will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the City Council during this and future remote meetings will be by roll call vote. If you are calling on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. And if you are watching on a computer or device, there is a raise hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications or the public hearing to be recognized. And I will keep repeating that during the public hearing so people are able to cycle in. Madam Clerk, we have the next order of business. Oh, actually, before we start our next order of business, I just want to have a moment of silence. The city lost a well-respected police officer in the past couple of days, Sergeant Tony Aiello. Tony Aiello was a great friend of mine, and he was an excellent human being all around.
Mr. President, Tony Parisi.
I'm sorry, Tony Aiello.
Tony Parisi.
Tony Parisi. Yeah. I'm sorry. Now you got me thinking. Tony Parisi, Anthony Parisi. He was a police officer for, I think, 33 years, 30 odd plus years. But before we have a moment of silence, I'd like to ask the mayor if she'd like to say anything about Tony.
Yes, Tony, we go way back before even political scenes. He's been Gloucester native, well known in the community. His family also fishing industry, and I went to school with his siblings. But he started with way back, if you remember, the Drop a Dime and the DARE program. He's like the resource officer that it is today. And before they even knew what a resource officer was, he was the DARE officer at the Gloucester High School. And he became, when I emailed some of my daughter's friends and my daughters, they were devastated because he was loved by them all. He actually, what Mike Scola does is what he does. He is just a person that was loved by all. He was the go-to person. It's devastating. It really is. My condolences to his family, but he was very respected, and he retired, and he became one of the little security liaisons that we had at the Surrey Free Library with the rest of the retired police officers. He always gave to the community. Wherever you needed him, he would volunteer. He would do anything you want. He would joke around. He could be serious when he needed to be serious. And he was always a liaison. He was still always, even though he was retired, I don't think a police officer, ask John McCarthy, I don't think a police officer ever retires. I really don't. It's in your blood. It's in your system. And you always try to be that liaison. And he always was, and he was so proud of his family. He would email and text us all the stuff that his children were doing, his son was doing, and everything, and what he was doing in the community, what we need to do. And, even if you were doing something wrong, he was there. He was like the high schools. He was their big brother, but yet he could be stern when they needed to. He knew the families. That was Anthony. Before he took that position at the high school, he made sure that he knew the family and the kids so he could feel what was going on. So he was there before we had mental health people in the schools. He was there for them, and he helped a lot of kids today succeed. So I want to thank him. I want to thank his family for letting us have them all these years because, you know, when you're a police officer, you're more with us than you are with your own family sometimes, and we all know that. So again, thank you for letting me speak. My condolences to his family and his children and his loved ones, because it is a loss to the city of Gloucester. And we will have the flag half-mast. I believe his wake's Thursday, but on his funeral Friday, we will make sure that the flag at City Hall is half-mast.
Thank you, Mayor. Those kind words. And we were going to have a moment of silence, please. Alrighty, thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, can we have the next order of business, please?
Next order of business is oral communications.
Okay, so the public shall have the opportunity at every regularly scheduled meeting to be heard under oral communications on matters not appearing on the agenda. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or a complaint of any nature relative to city business to appear before the council, state their problem without debate, and the matter shall be referred to the proper agency through the office of the mayor. The resident will be notified within a 2 weeks period relative to disposition of same, and a copy shall be forwarded to the city council. Persons speaking under oral communication shall be limited to 3 minutes each, and the council president shall not allow any complaints as to individual performances. So I'm just going to state right now that we have 15 people on the panel list, which is us, and then we have 38 people in attendance. So I'm going to start off with Lenore. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Can we have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Lenore Ballero, Balliro, and I'm at 1022 Washington Street in Lanesville.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much for taking my comments. I've been a homeowner in Lanesville for nearly 9 years, and I'm here to discuss a safety issue that affects many pedestrians in my area and I think around the city. Before I continue, I do want to recognize that the city is facing many challenges as a result of COVID, and I appreciate that. So here's the issue. There are several houses in a row on Washington Street on the way to our little downtown area that don't take care of the snow removal on the sidewalk in front of their houses. And this has been a chronic problem that hasn't been addressed, at least since I've been here. But this year, especially because of COVID, many more of us are out walking to get exercise, fresh air, and social connection. We're following the mayor's suggestion that we get out more. We're pushing strollers, we're walking dogs, we're going to the post office, and some families are walking to Plum Cove School. And we want to be safe on our walks. This past storm was particularly difficult. About 5 houses in a row didn't shovel, which meant we had to walk on the street. And in this area, there are curbs that affect visibility, it gets slippery. And I want to know that many of these houses do plow and shovel their own driveways and walkways, but ignore the sidewalk. And some of these homes are summer residents, so they're not even around in the winter. I've covered many possibilities for addressing this issue on my own before coming before the city council. I've talked to some of my neighbors directly and pointed out the safety issue as well as the ordinance, but to no avail. And just a note here that I have offered to help anyone in my neighborhood, as many of us do, people with health issues. If they have trouble with shoveling and they can't afford to hire someone, we're there to help them. So that's not part of my issue here. I have talked to my wonderful city council rep, Val Gilman. And this year I actually called the street numbers into the non-emergency police phone line a couple of days after the storm. And I've since learned back from Val that the Gloucester Police did issue some flyers reminding residents of the ordinance and the subsequent fines. And I do really appreciate that as a first step, but didn't seem to motivate people to shovel. I also appreciate that the mayor has reminded residents on her safety alert calls that this is residents' responsibility to shovel. And I know this information is on various websites. But if people are not held accountable, why would they bother if they're not motivated, as many of us are, by intentions of being a good neighbor? So I'm here to ask why, if an ordinance is on the books, shouldn't it be enforced? I sense that if folks are fined even once, they will take their responsibility more seriously. And if this ordinance doesn't seem to be workable for the city, I'm wondering whether the whole thing needs to be re-examined in some way. We all really want to be safe. So thank you so much for hearing my comments. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenore. I appreciate that. And you'll be getting a response from the mayor's office within 2 weeks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right, up next, we have Mortallaro Lobster. I think this is Vince. Vince, can you hear me?
Steve,
Yes.
sorry, it's Patty Page. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Patty. I say Mortallaro Lobster and I think of Vince. So name and address for the record, please.
Patty Page, 3 Title Cove Way.
Go ahead, Patty.
Hi, Steve. Happy New Year to everyone.
You too.
And thank you for taking this. As the city embarks on renewing open space and harbor plans, robust public participation and engagement needs to be central to the process. As a city, how we engage each other matters. Civic engagement and public participation is fundamental to the community and how it operates. Better community outcomes are realized by robust participation of affected stakeholders and diverse citizen groups. Public participation precepts are to inform, consult, collaborate, and empower the public. Informed, involved, empowered citizens feel a part of the solutions, avoiding hard feelings, resentment, and frustration with the outcomes from the process. This can help avoid contentious decisions. The public should not be alienated and unheard by government officials. Practices failing to conduct robust outreach or which limit public participation are ill-advised. Such claims as to be respectful of people's time in the name of expediency, and these topics are dense, should not be used as excuses to limit or stifle public participation. To conduct public meetings as business meetings without public participation guts the process of civic engagement. Community meetings are not just public work sessions, but more importantly, they are not spectator meetings. Are these not business meetings of and for the people? Democracy is not a spectator sport. Formation of ad hoc committees which meet in private, then forward recommendations for approval to committee, further serves to alienate committee members and the public from the process. By restricting public input to a public hearing at the end of the process, when months of work has been done, consultants have weighed in, government officials give their oversight and positions are well entrenched, is no opportunity to voice any view other than approval. Meetings are often not well announced and devoid of any stakeholder outreach. Most recently, surveys omitting a choice for school use on a former school site, the importance of Mados Field as a neighborhood open space infrastructure, the city's open space plan, which is now under review by state MAPC and has been co-opted out of the hands of the Open Space Committee, changes and uses for the Harbor Masters building, the open space use you will hear about tonight, and harbor planning are examples of a need for a robust public engagement process. Some individuals are granted access and are privately solicited for comment. They never have to take their position into the public square. We now have whispers of Shaolin Lu 2 on I-4C2 traveling through the community. As an example of really good civic engagement, one only has to look at the inclusive and interactive harbor planning process Salem is conducting. Plenty of interactive mapping, survey, and public interactions allowed at these meetings. It should be clear where, when, and how the public will have various opportunities to be involved throughout the civic process. These topics can be complex and dense in nature, therefore taking time for education and clarity is a necessary part of the process, no matter how time consuming. I'm here to request that the administration and the city council together take up an inquiry and report to the public as to how we can engage the public and improve this process throughout the city processes. Thank you for that. I think I'm at 3 minutes, 47 seconds.
Exactly. No problem, Patty.
I know
Thank
it's
you.
2 minutes. Thank you. I appreciate the
I was
time.
going to give you an update real soon, but I know you were close to the end. I appreciate it. We'll get back to you. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
My
I'll
pleasure.
send that in writing as well.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, next we have Stephen Noel. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I sure can.
Can we have your name and address for the record, please?
Sure. Steve Noel. I live at 567 Essex Ave.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Gloucester. And I've been a resident here for just a little under 3 years, living on the North Shore for 25 years. Just to kind of echo that last set of comments about the lack of collaboration when decisions are made. There's a recent decision to have a firing range reopened at the Haskell Reservation with no notification to the residents in the neighborhood.
Stephen?
Excuse me, Mr. Knowles, Mr. President, point of order. This is on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm going to tell him right now. So Stephen, we have this on the agenda this evening for a public hearing.
Okay,
So this isn't the proper place for this right now. It will be during the public hearing process.
got it.
So if you want to stay tuned, and we'll circle you back in a little bit when we open the public hearing, then
I
you'll be
sure
able to
will.
share your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem, pal. Thank you very much. And next we have Kristin Ward. Kristin, can you hear me?
Yes, hello, I'm
Hi.
Kristin Ward.
Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Kristin Ward, 27 High Street in Gloucester.
Thank you very much. Go right ahead.
Thank you for taking questions or comments tonight. I wanted to come on to discuss a safety concern regarding the one-way wrong-way drivers on the beginning of High Street. As you approach the beginning of High Street, it's one way until Hickory Street. And we're having issues where cars are going the wrong way down this portion of the street. This has been a chronic problem over the years, and it's just progressively gotten worse. We've brought this up in the past, and we just brought this up again this summer after we personally had a close call where my son was almost run over by a wrong way driver, and he literally had to jump out of the way of the car. The problem with this part of the street is there's very little line of sight, and it's a sweeping corner, so it's very difficult to see if a car is coming the wrong way until the last second. So it's very difficult to move out of the way if a car was approaching the wrong way, and you're not expecting a car to come the wrong way down the street when you're walking. So you're always aware of who's behind you, but you're not expecting somebody coming the wrong way. So this even happened to me the other night. A month ago, as I was walking my dog, someone came the wrong way. I motioned to them that they were going the wrong way. And they indicated, I've lived here for years. I didn't know it was one way, and then indicated there was no signage. So that was just a little odd to me. But this is just the incidents. I know we have some data from Sharon Cohen, who some of the neighbors that live there are reporting almost daily incidents of wrong way drivers. We've brought this up, over the summer through emails and See Click Fix and with Val Gilman. We did a site visit in September with a group of concerned neighbors. I know Val, I believe, has made 3 formal requests that have been denied by the DPW. We're trying to figure out how we can get this addressed. And we're asking the mayor if she could please intervene in the appeal process to address the safety issue before someone gets seriously hurt. We have suggested at a group, maybe just add in the simple thing by adding an additional do not enter sign to the left side of the street. And just to make more visibility, because if you're coming down Hickory Street from Plum Cove School, you can make a left-hand illegal turn easily without seeing the do not enter sign that's currently there, because it's on the other side of the street and it's beyond Hickory Street. So we're seeing, I think a lot of cars are turning illegally left. On election day, I guess there were a lot of cars that had gone illegal down that portion of the street. They're just not seeing it. We have brought this up through email, like See Click Fix, and we've just gotten responses that are explanations that just haven't been, I thought, reasonable, such as there's sufficient signage, which I disagree, because then this wouldn't happen often enough. Also, it was worded that the intersection was actually too wide, which is actually the opposite. It's a very wide intersection. Also, the other comment that was made was that perhaps, the the police department could get involved in enforcing speed. You can't fix poor driving habits was another comment. And then it's non-traditional to have 2 do not enter signs at the beginning of the intersection. In fact, if you go right on Google Maps, you can quickly pull up examples of do not enter signs on both sides of the intersection. In our ward, there's one right on River Road and Leonard Street, where there's do not enter signs on both sides.
Kristin, we're a little over time here, so.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay, if you want to wrap it up.
Yep. So there are signs like that on both sides of the street. So we're just asking that we have this relooked at and resolved. And we just don't feel that doing nothing is not a solution, and that's kind of where it's been right now. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much. All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak on the oral communications? If you're calling in on a telephone, you can press *9. And if you are watching on a device or a laptop, you can, there's a raise hand button. Oral communications. All right, we have one more. Sharon, can you hear me? Hello, Sharon.
She's muted.
Yeah, she's got to let herself in.
Okay. Now she's not.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I want to back up what Kristin Ward said. I live on the corner.
Sharon, can we have your name and address for the record, please, first?
I'm sorry, Sharon Cohen, 1041 Washington Street.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Zanesville. And I live on the corner of Washington and High Street. And I kept a list for Val starting the end of September about the wrong way drivers. And this is fall into winter. Summer, we have a constant stream of wrong way drivers coming down the road. At least one a day, sometimes 2 or 3 in a row. But the list reads September 24th, September 27th, September 28th, October 1st, October 21st. I don't know where I was in those 2 weeks before. October 23rd, October 30th, October 31st, November 1st. Election day, there were 4 cars that went the wrong way. And this goes up through Christmas. Every other day, wrong way driver. And these are just the ones I see. When my shades are down, you know, or I'm not in that side of the house, I don't see them. So it's a constant problem. The road is narrow. There are no sidewalks. A lot of people walk around the block on this road. This is the road that kids walk to school on. Yes, I'm going to back up Kristin and say, I think we need someone to go and actually look at the signage and see why it's not working.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Sharon. We appreciate it. Is there anybody else that would like to speak under oral communications? Press *9 if you're calling in, and there's a raise hand button if you're watching on a device or a computer. All right, seeing none, we're going to end our oral communications part of this. I just want to announce before we move to our next order of business that our public hearing on 99 Essex Avenue is going to be continued. So we will not be bringing this up this evening. So anybody that is on the call or watching this evening, for that matter, we will not be taking this up this evening, and it is going to be continued until January 26th. So that is that's when it will be back on for a public hearing at the council level. So if you are here for that reason only, you can log off, or you can stay tuned and watch how the city works. Madam Clerk, can we have the next order of business, please?
Next order of business is the presentation from Karen Carroll, the Director of Public Health, regarding COVID-19.
Thank you. So before we have Karen start up, I talked to Vanessa the other day, and I think this is a good idea for the coming months, is to have a monthly report, or to have our health director to come before us and guide us with this stuff. So that being said, we look forward to monthly updates, and if things get worse, Karen, we'll get you in for maybe bi-weekly updates or something like that. But welcome to our meeting.
Thank you, Councilor Blank, and good evening to the other councilors. I'm Karen Carroll, the Public Health Director for the City of Gloucester. And I'll give you a brief update on kind of where things are at in the city with both the COVID response effort for active cases, as well as for our vaccination efforts that began last week and today. And then if you have questions and concerns, I'm happy to take those as well. So at this point, we have 179 active cases here in Gloucester. Our numbers have continued to rise over the past few weeks, really since Thanksgiving, not unlike other communities and really everywhere at this point throughout the country. Our hospitalizations have stayed fairly low, which is great. We currently have 5 people in the hospital and 33 deceased since the beginning of COVID. And again, we had several months with no new deaths. And in the last couple of weeks, we've experienced a few more folks who were affected by COVID or had their deaths were coded as being COVID related. The wastewater results are also continued to rise very significantly. 2 weeks ago, we saw a really large jump in our virus level that reflects sort of general virus level in the community. Last week, the level came down a little bit. So again, that was a good sign in that we didn't see another huge jump. So we are optimistic that, maybe it's not exploding at the rates that we feared it could, but it's still very, very high. So it tells all of those things together. Tell us what we already know is that the prevalence of COVID in our community and the virus, it's very widespread and it is here. Our schools and many of our businesses continue to operate safely with very little transmission within those agencies. The schools have not yet hit any of the DESE, this Department of Ed's state thresholds for taking the next step, bringing in, doing some testing or surveillance of a whole classroom, a whole school, a whole bus. So we're very happy about that. The school is working really closely with our team to make sure that any staff or child that should be quarantining is quarantining and that they have the services they need. Other industries, our clusters and our cases are mainly linked to households. That's still the number one source of spread is within households from, family member to family member when someone is sick. It's difficult to isolate and really keep apart and not spread the virus in your own home when someone is sick. And the other place is private clubs and gatherings. So again, not unlike the rest of the state, it's more what's happening in sort of informal social environments that is the resulting in a lot of spread of the virus. I'm going to move on from sort of that picture of where we are. And if you want more details, we can come back to it. One more thing I want to just add in terms of where we are, in terms of our capacity as a community to cope with the virus. Our hospitals, we speak with them pretty much daily to monitor both the statewide bed capacity numbers, the region, HMCC Region 3, which we are a member of, and our local AGH and Beverly Hospital numbers. And at this point, they continue to be doing well, sitting in the 80 to 90% occupancy for their hospitals. There have been a couple of weeks where the ICU beds, the pressure was significantly greater and they were into the mid to high 90% capacity. So that's obviously very concerning and we're watching that really closely. In terms of our capacity to respond to the need to contact trace and isolate, identify, isolate, quarantine, we are still keeping up with that. We have had to make some changes to our close contact protocols, but we are still reaching all of our index cases and anyone who is considered a high risk category, close contact, or a school age, preschool age child. The state is still available if we need them for a backup, but there are some limitations there. So our preference is to, again, try to continue with that here locally. So in terms of our vaccination effort, because that's probably where the bulk of the questions are. And again, like in the beginning of COVID, things change hour to hour, day to day. And so it's very, very difficult to keep people informed and to stay informed ourselves to know what's coming next. But through the mayor's office, we have quite a team who is working really hard to get information out. There was a robocall today, so that's great, a press release. We successfully vaccinated 100 first responders today from Cape Ann and Ipswich. It was a fantastic clinic. It went without a glitch. The only glitch was a new software system that was introduced by the state to the team midweek last week. So some of our vaccinators had not even seen the software system when they arrived to work today at the clinic. We had a phenomenal effort from our new IT director, Ryan Knowles, who has been on site at every clinic as well as the pre-clinic to make sure the software worked and conduct the just-in-time training. The system is very helpful. If it continues to work and stay live, it's a real-time system. So people schedule their own appointments, they enter their own health insurance information, that's billed automatically through to the state. The vaccine record goes automatically through to the state's Maven database. And it also notifies people that, when to come in. You log in, you say you've arrived, you get a text telling you to actually enter the building the whole way through. And as soon as someone gets checked in the front area by our greeter admin team, they're sent through to the vaccinators. The vaccinators also are real-time on the computers, entering the data, going over the information, and then signing the person out of their area. It allows us to know exactly what is going on every minute, every second of the entire clinic and be extremely organized and efficient. So we're pleased that the system is working as well as it is, but it's presented, obviously a lot of challenges in the week leading up to planning these clinics. Last week, we had a dry run of setting up our clinic and we vaccinated the vaccinators. So we vaccinated the staff working at the clinics, which is allowed and encouraged by the state. So at this point, we've run the one clinic one day. We had every single dose was used. There was no doses wasted or spilled, or there were no problems with any of that. We had 2 cancellations, of which our cancellation coordinator, Carol Mondello, picked up at 7 this morning, the first cancellation, and quickly had someone filled into that spot. So it's a lot of eyes and watching it closely, but it's really important that every dose gets used and we don't have to try to transport, or we can't transport it back. We can't, once it's been thawed, we can't keep it. So, and we can't bring it back to the health department. So there are a lot of rules and requirements, but we were able to comply with all of those with help from our emergency management team in Eric Smith's department, our new emergency manager, Robert Rivas, who has stepped in on day 1 and been part of our team. Kelly Highland, our public health nurse, is the incident commander for all of the clinics. And it's a fabulous team and everything. And Joe Aiello, of course, Ed Conley and his team provided security for the clinics. So I cannot say enough about how lucky we are. The mayor's office, again, supplying the support that we needed, helping with the public information, the press, those kinds of issues. So again, the clinic was for regional first responders as defined by the state as of last Friday. As I said earlier, the criteria are continually changing, and that is tricky for us. So we had to kind of cut off who was in the category as of last Friday. And fortunately, the only category added over the weekend was Coast Guards, and they have been taken care of through another vaccination effort run federally. So at this point, it was first responders that were done regionally. And then school nurses were added to the category last week. School nurses who provide COVID testing. So again, that raised a lot of questions, concern for people. We wish we could do all school nurses. We wish we could do all nurses, but we can't, and we need to follow the priorities and the guidelines set by the state, or we will jeopardize our ability to get future vaccines and be part of their programs. So we were allowed to open up midweek last week the clinic to school nurses who do COVID testing, which are many of our Gloucester public school nurses. And I believe we had a couple from Ipswich and maybe one from Manchester. And then the final group, the final people that were allowed to get vaccine were those working the clinic. So in general, you know, there are 500 doses. We expect that they will all be used predominantly by first responders through the week, and we are busy. Tomorrow's clinic had 98 people signed up when I left today. So we are confident we'll fill all 100 spots, and then we'll work the next day from there. So I think, you know, I've tried to kind of keep it high level. At this point, I'll just add, we do not have a lot of information about what will come next. The state is going to allow us each week to order more vaccine if we are able to go the next step with the group that they say we can do. But we do not have plans in place at the moment, nor do we know quite who that will be and how that will work. So a lot of things move forward. Frankly, at this point, we're really focused on this week, making sure that things go really smoothly. And then we get this down and we have a safe and efficient clinic. I think those are the main things, but I'd be happy to answer any questions if there's things that I overlooked.
All right, thank you, Karen. Do we have any questions from the council? Councilor Cox?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Very useful information. I've received 2 questions repeatedly concerning capacity, I guess. The supermarkets, they don't seem to be operating at the 25% rule. Are they subject to it?
I don't believe they're the 25%. I think when the governor went back to that phase, it is for certain industries, but without looking, it changes so often, and I would not want to quote the wrong thing. I do know that our food inspector is working closely with our supermarkets, and but I will double check with him that they are following the very latest guidance.
In the call that went out this evening, it says businesses. I mean, they do attach the 25% to certain businesses, but then it also says retail. So, I mean,
right, in the earlier stages, anyone that sold food or pharmaceuticals was not considered a retail environment. They were considered an essential. So I believe that's still the case, and that's why they're exempt from the 25%. But as I said, I don't want to, misquote, and I will get back to you.
Right, no problem. My other question is, are you planning on getting assistance from CERT and MRC, people that are trained to help with these types of clinics before you go to the general public?
Yes, we will only go through MRC is going to be the way in which we staff future clinics. If we need help beyond the team that is currently in place, which if we do larger clinics, we will need help. And what we are doing is directing everyone to the MA Responds website, maresponds.org, which is the Medical Reserve Corps. We have a chapter here. And I believe many of the MRC are also CERT. So they are familiar with the CERT volunteers, and they incorporate both of them. I think many of them are sort of are both MRC and CERT. So we are encouraging people. We probably will need help, but we will have to do it through them. We will not have the capacity to manage volunteers to check credentials, queries, SORIs, all the things that need to happen, scheduling. So that will all go through our regional MRC coordinator, who is Lisa Jackson.
Lisa Jackson, yeah. I am both, so.
Pardon?
I am both, CERT and
Great.
MRC, so.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, Lisa's amazing. And I know you guys are doing the best that you can with everything you have. So I just, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask these questions that keep coming up. So thank you so much.
No, we understand. There are so many questions and we wish we, you know, could answer the public's questions. There's so many that come all day, but we're pretty thin with our own resources, and our effort is to, you know, keep the community safe and try to move the vaccine out. So, yeah.
Great.
I've never had this many unanswered emails, and it you know, it feels horrible, but it's just where we're at right now. So,
yeah. I would love to see everybody in the health department and many other departments just, you know, get a month off after everything is settled. It would be lovely for you guys to get just some peace of mind and some time with your family, I'm sure.
Yes. Thank you, Karen. It would be, yeah. I worry about our nurse tracing team and who are now also doing vaccinations. They literally don't and won't take a day off because they want to be on that morning call to not miss information and to hand off information. And it's kind of got to the point where we, you know, stopped asking them to, because they're just that this is what they do. We actually have a nurse manager who's coming back from Florida tonight. She came back to assist at the clinic because we needed a certain skill set that what we found last week in our first smaller clinics doing the staff was that our team is not immune to COVID exposures. So we had 2 key positions with COVID exposures or COVID scares last week, and we had to go down the list into the team. And so we realized we needed that depth. And so that's why Bridget Nelligan has, you know, I asked her and she returned from Florida. So we have a kind of dedication with our nurse team as well that is really extraordinary. And I hope they get a month off in the sunshine too somewhere. But
Me too. Any other councilor questions, Councilor Holmgren?
I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Karen. That's all. Thank you to the whole team.
Thank you. Councilor Gilman?
Karen, echo what Council Holcomb said, but I do have a question. What can we do to help you as counselors? I mean, are there things that we can do to help you more?
You guys are great. You've asked me this before. So I think saying thanks to the team is fantastic. You know, that it means a lot when the mayor acknowledges them, or you guys do. And I share that. They're tired. We're all tired. And it's hard. I mean, they really, yeah, everyone is. And then we have this sort of political climate around us and things happening that are adding to all of our load. So I think, you know, if you know any of the nurse contact tracers, any of the health department staff, they love to hear from you. Just that means a lot. But I think all of us are doing this. Our agencies too. You know, I think the 2 big agencies that need the most support and frankly are our biggest supporters and helpers when people are really in need are Action in our community. They are providing fuel assistance, rental assistance. So, you know, if you want to share their information so people can, if they want to help, if they want to give, if they're able to, Action is literally helping people keep their heat on and stay in their homes. They are burning through their funds quickly. And Open Door, they're seeing and have continued to see incredible pressure on their pantry for almost a year now. They never say no. They never stop being innovative. They never stop finding new ways to meet the needs of families, quarantiners, you know, people in isolation, seniors who don't want the big box. They just want, you know, a smaller box or a different box. They're fantastic. So these 2 agencies, and they're looking after all of Cape Ann. So I think, you know, those are people that support us, and that's a huge help for us and our nurses when we can actually, you know, help someone who we're contacting to be able to eat and be safe and all of those things. I don't know what else. I think the biggest thing you can do is help us with communication. You know, anytime the mayor's office posts something or the health department, just share it and encourage people to make sure, you know, I think this week we posted a reminder to people to have your first aid kit in place with Tylenol. You know, some of these things that we kind of thought about in the spring, but now we had a break for a while, but now we're back, and there are so many families who are all of a sudden in quarantine. They can't go to the store, they can't, you know, so it's really happening to so many people around us. So if you can help us with those kinds of reminders about how to be prepared prior to getting COVID or prior to having someone in your house come down with COVID. And then, you know, of course, all the traditional messaging, but then as soon as we know more about the vaccine, and just helping us to get the word out so that people feel confident that we are following a fair process, and we are doing the most we can with what we have, and doing, you know, so, and whatever information we can get out to help people understand that without having them call into the health department is really helpful. We're not going to forget about anybody, you know, and I think that's would be my message, that we're going to find you, you know, when it's your turn, we're going to find you. We're working with our other partners who have access to vaccine. And I think you'll see more of that in the coming days. The state told us today that there will be mass vaccination sites that are opening, and then there will be application process for other agencies like shelters and congregate living. So people will be able to put up their hand for vaccine. There'll be other mechanisms that it will start to arrive to communities. And if we can all share that, that will be a good thing. And then the health department will be trying to coordinate best we can to make sure that people at the highest point on the priority list are taken care of. And we'll kind of be filling in some of those gaps as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other councilors have any questions? Councilor Nolan?
More of a comment, Karen. Thank you and your staff for all that you do. Your volunteers are exceptional. From the testing sites to the inoculation of this, it's going wonderful. Your insight and your staff's reports to us for how they give us means to share to make things well is excellent. And definitely lean on Cara Mondello. She's a tough little girl.
Oh, we too. She's extraordinary, and she is watching that list so there's not a single dose wasted. And I think that's one of the things we've also learned, that you don't just roll this out and the crate of vaccine arrives at the health department and it's easy. It's not. Every little detail needs to be watched and followed, and it changes, and people do cancel. Things do happen. People get sick. We're in a pandemic. So we need to make sure that we know about a problem as soon as possible, and that we have a plan for what we're going to do to address it or fill it. And Carol Mondello has been on the front line of this and is doing a fantastic job.
Thank you. Councilor Pat?
Yes, just a quick thank you to Karen, your staff, your volunteers, and to the administration for not only all that you're doing, but for communicating with us. That's how we'll get through all of this, is through communicating and doing the best. So thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Anybody else?
Thank you, Councilor.
So I have a couple of questions and a comment for you. So there was a city or town that just got reprimanded by the state for giving out doses for those that weren't in the cycle. I know the shelf life on this thing is very, very limited. Do we have a plan, like if we do have an extra number of doses, to give them to the next tier of people waiting in line? Because I think these, you know, I've watched the news, I'm sure of everybody else, where, you know, one town has been issued, you know, 100,000, they only use 60,000 of them, and 40,000 they have to dispose of, which is a sin at this point in this pandemic. So I hope, do we have a plan for the extra doses that we may have?
Absolutely. Great question, and thank you for bringing it up. So through the week, we will continue to move first responders from our region forward. So any cancellations for, to this morning's was filled by a first responder that was booked later in the week. So we will just keep doing that so that the first responders are until they're completely done. We have no more first responders. Chief Smith, who's our PIO, will send a kind of last call out, and making sure that any first responder in our 5 towns that wants it and needs it can come and get it, as well as school nurses who are COVID testing in our region. So at that point, our first responder clinic will be finished. And if we have any doses, we'll be watching that really closely. We'll be in touch with the state. And what we will do is go back up the priority list to the very first priority group to see if there are people that were added to that first group, which there were. One of the areas that we think there might be some people in our community in Gloucester that were added to the list, and some of them don't really belong to a hospital group, is some of our primary care offices. So we've had several requests. So we are really tightening up, and we're starting with the very first bullet. If you can find it on mass.gov, the COVID vaccine, when do I get my vaccine? And we will start with the first bullet, which is COVID testers. The administration has redeployed another city employee to work with me to, make sure that we've covered off on our COVID testers, that there wasn't, and we're working with the hospitals and the health center. Was there someone that missed their, vaccine? They have that covered pretty well at the hospital and large groups like Leahy. But as I said, there's some smaller providers that may not. So we will, go right down the list in order of priority until we use all of the doses. You can keep the doses refrigerated for a certain number of hours. So we will do that until they are all used.
Awesome, thank you. And then my last, it's more of a statement, something that you said earlier about, it's being transmitted at home, what you see, in small gatherings and stuff like that. I'm just disappointed a little bit, and I know it's not anything that we can do as a city. It's more of the way it's been rolled out where, and I'm not saying that inmates are lesser people than we are, but to give these shots to inmates before people like myself and that are last on the list to get this, that will be able to contract it more easily than an inmate that's incarcerated. I'm just disappointed that, the law-abiding citizens got pushed back a little bit and in favor of this. So I know it's nothing, but I just wanted to say that I think that's kind of a little bit disappointing on my part that I have to wait for a COVID shot. And, I'm at a high risk. My wife works at a school. I'm going to the market. I'm trying to live my life as normal as possible without coming in contact with anybody, but it's just kind of kick in the pants to, normal folk like us.
I think that, there are questions and we're fielding a lot of concerns in the health department about why am I not before another group. What I can say about the folks in incarceration is that, first of all, they are experiencing some of the highest rates of transmission in there. And so from a public health point of view, which is all this is, it's a disease moving amongst people, not discriminating who they are. It is, correctional facilities have had probably the highest rates of transmission. That affects families who come to visit. It affects all of the staff that work there. And so from a public health point of view, that's where we need to focus. Long-term care, correctional.
No, I get it, but I'm just normal folk. That's how I feel. So, but we appreciate you. If there's nothing else from the council, I just want to thank Karen and her staff for doing an amazing job with the updates. I know we're pumping out daily. Vanessa's been emailing us daily on the cases and the how to stay safe, which is awesome. And that's the only thing we can do right now. It starts with us by wearing your mask, washing your hands, staying 6 feet apart and avoid gatherings. So it starts with you and me and every one of us personally to stop the spread. So we appreciate all the information that you've been pumping out, and we look forward to seeing you again in a few weeks.
Sounds good.
All right, Karen, thank you.
Be well, everyone.
You too, appreciate it. Madam Clerk, can we have the next order of business, please?
The next order of business is the consent agenda.
All right, is there anybody that would like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Councillor Gilman?
Thanks, Counselor. I'd like to remove executive session minutes of February 24th, 2020, July 14th, 2020, and November 17th, 2020.
So item number 2 under approval of minutes and council standing committees. Okay. Is there anybody else that would like to remove anything? Seeing none. Councillor Gilman, go ahead.
So I feel like the details of the conversation are not complete. And I thought that we might want to consider going into executive session at the next meeting so we can understand the details prior to approving them. So I don't feel like I'm prepared to approve them right now. We just got them this afternoon and there are details missing. So I just wanted to suggest that maybe we could bring it back to that or get the full version.
So under your request, it takes 3 city councilors to request a executive session or an executive session by myself. So why don't we continue this until the next city council meeting? And then we can figure this out during the week, and I'll reach out to you and I'll pick your brain on figure out how you do it, how you'd like to proceed with this, whether we're going to call it an executive session or not. So why don't we continue this to the next city council meeting?
Great, that's fair. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. So with nothing else being removed from the consent agenda, I will entertain a motion from the consent agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councillor Cox, seconded by Councillor Holmgren. So I will call for the roll call. Councillor Cox,
Yes.
Councillor Gilman,
Yes.
Councillor Holmgren,
Yes.
Councillor LeBlanc, yes. Councillor McCarthy,
Yes.
Councillor Memhard,
Yes.
Councillor Nolan,
Yes.
Councillor Pett. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor O'Hara,
Yes.
and Councillor Pett.
Yes.
All right, motion to accept the consent agenda as amended was approved on a roll call vote of 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Madam Clerk, may I have the next order of business, please?
The next order of business is the Special Budget and Finance Committee report of December 30th, 2020.
Thank you. Councillor Cox?
Hello, everyone. For the budget meeting on December 30th, I have put forward a consent agenda. There were 2 items on it. If anybody has any questions or concerns, speak now. Seeing none, I move the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, motion's been made by Councillor Cox, seconded by Councillor Memhard. Any discussion, Councillor Cox?
I would like to note that there was another round of donations to the Veterans Office. So thank you to the people that donated. The other item was a grant from the police for the police department. So we're always willing to accept grants.
Yes, thank you. All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the roll call. Councillor Cox,
Yes.
Councillor Gilman,
Yes.
Councillor Holmgren,
Yes.
Councillor LeBlanc, yes. Councillor McCarthy,
Yes.
Councillor Memhard,
Yes.
Councillor Nolan,
Yes.
Councillor O'Hara,
Yes.
and Councillor Pett.
Yes.
Motion to approve the budget and finance consent agenda passes on a roll call vote of 9 in favor, 0 opposed. All right, Madam Clerk, next order of business, please.
Next order of business is the Ordinance and Administration Committee report of January 4th, 2021.
Thank you. I spoke with Councilor Nolan earlier this afternoon. He is having some eye problems with his new spectacles, so he has asked me to read the Standing Committee Report for Budget and Finance, Ordinance Administration, and I don't have a problem doing that. So Ordinance Administration recommended to the City Council by roll call vote, 3 in favor, 0 opposed, that the City Council forward a letter to Mass DOT requesting that the speed limit on Leonard Street be reduced to 20 miles an hour, and that such letter be accompanied by the spread study and certificate vote of the City Council, and I so move.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by myself and seconded by Councilor O'Hara. Councilor Gilman, you are the maker of the order, so would you like to have a discussion on this?
I would, but I'd like to amend the motion to include the recommendation of our police chief, Ed Conley, that we received today.
Do you want to?
Second.
Do you want to move it?
Yes, I moved that, yes, and I so
good.
move.
So
Second.
moved by Councilor Gilman and seconded by Councilor Holmgren. Any discussion on the amendment? All right, seeing none, so we will vote on the amendment by roll call. Councilor Cox,
Yes.
Councilor Gilman,
Yes,
Councilor Holmgren,
Yes.
Councilor LeBlanc, yes. Councilor McCarthy,
Yes.
Councilor Memhard,
Yes.
Councilor Nolan,
Yes.
Councilor O'Hara,
Yes.
and Councilor Pat.
Yes.
Motion to amend the previous motion passes on a roll call vote with 9 in favor, 0 opposed. So back to the main motion with the amendment. Any other discussion? Councilor Gilman.
I just would like to thank O&A for hearing this and for the support that I've received from the residents of Annisquam, including a vote and a meeting that was held in early January of the Village Hall Association. And they voted unanimously. There were 25 people on the call to support this. And it's really very much a grassroots support of all of Annisquam for the safety of all the pedestrians. So obviously I support it. And I appreciate the seriousness of the matter. And I am optimistic that this will get approved by the state. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gilman. Anything else? Seeing none, I'll call for the roll call. Councilor Cox,
Yes.
Councilor Gilman,
Yes.
Councilor Holmgren,
Yes.
Councilor LeBlanc, yes. Councilor McCarthy,
Yes.
Councilor Memhard,
Yes.
Councilor Nolan,
Yes.
Councilor O'Hara,
Yes.
and Councilor Pat.
Yes.
Motion passes on a roll call vote of 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Madam Clerk, next order of business, please.
Next order of business is the Planning and Development Standing Committee report of January 6, 2021.
Councilor Gilman.
Thank you. There are no items to report under this heading.
Thank you, Councilor. All right, Madam Clerk, next order of business, please.
Is the first scheduled public hearing 2020-010, Special City Council Permit 2020-002, Essex Avenue, number 99A, map 216, lot 126, Gloucester zoning ordinance, section 1.3.6, parentheses B, building heights in excess of 35 feet, section 2.3.4, parentheses 13, marine-related service, storage or repair limited primarily in the MI district to commercial fishing vessels, section 5.5, lowland requirements, section 5.5.2, and section 5.5.3 in the EB district.
Thank you. I will open the public hearing and continue this till January 26th, 2021 for that City Council meeting. Madam Clerk, next order of business, please.
The second public hearing 2021-001, group petition under City Charter Section 9-1, free petition, subsection B, group petition regarding the use of public land for Gloucester Police Shooting Range.
Alrighty, so I'm going to open the public hearing and kind of make a quick announcement. So during this group petition, which requires 150 votes from registered voters throughout the city, we are allowed to have the speakers come before us, this public hearing, and speak on this matter. Just so the attendees know, there will be no action on this evening. If there is a city councilor that would like to change the ordinance, they can reach out to the clerk's office tomorrow or anytime later on this week and request that the ordinance get changed by a council order, which will go back to budget. I'm on the budget and finance kicks, the ordinance administration, and we will review everything and move forward with that. So a couple of things also in our rules of procedure this evening is we'll have 15 minutes for people that are in favor, 15 minutes for people that are opposed. And what I mean by in favor of 15 minutes, if there is a leader that would like, or someone in a group that would like to take up, would like to speak first, we'll allow the 15 minutes for the first speaker to kind of state their case, and the same thing with the in favor and opposition. And then after that, everybody will get 3 minutes. I'm going to try to be strict on the 3 minutes. We've got 46 people on the call right now. And if with the 15 minutes and the 46 people times 3 minutes each, we're talking about 3 hours worth of discussion here. So I'm going to try to reel in the 3 minutes and try to be not strict, but I'm going to try to keep it under the 3 minutes. And I'll kind of give you a warning when you get up to that point there. So with that being said, is there anybody that would like to speak in favor? So once again, if you are calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. And if you are listening, you are watching on a device or a laptop or a computer, there is a raise hand button. So we have our first speaker, Tim. Can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Timothy Sove. My address is 25 Lindale Ave.
Go ahead.
Hi, sir. So I'm calling in favor of the range for the Gloucester Police Department. I'm a former active duty Marine, 2001 to 2005. I have 2 combat deployments to Iraq, and I understand how important marksmanship is. It's a perishable skill, and I believe that's something that the police officers in Gloucester should have the ability to continuously train on.
Okay, is that all, Tim?
Yes, sir. That's it.
All right,
Thank you.
awesome. We appreciate your service. Thank you. All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor? All right, seeing none, is there anybody that would like to speak in opposition? All righty, let's see here. I apologize in the beginning if I'm gonna butcher your name. Nubar?
Yeah, Nubar Alexanian.
Yeah, there we go. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Nubar Alexanian. I live at 11 Sumner Street.
Go ahead.
And that's about a quarter mile from the firing range. And I've been asked to make some remarks for the neighborhood here, and I'll keep it brief because there are a lot of people who want to speak.
Good.
And Jean Grobe and Amy Donnelly, I'd like them to speak right after me, if that's okay with you, if my comments are brief. And I'd like to start by agreeing with the veteran who just spoke, that we all agree that the training for the Gloucester Police Department is very important, and nothing that we want to do wants to undermine any of that. But we requested this public hearing to discuss the reinstatement and modification of the 209 ordinance for the West Gloucester firing range. And with all due respect, we're dismayed that the area of the side of our backup reservoir, Haskell Pond, at the end of Forest Lane, has been approved to be used as a shooting range. Yes, it's true. This is city property, but it's also true that it's a neighborhood. It's our neighborhood, something we feel needs to be part of this discussion. So those of us who went through the ordeal to close the first shooting range at Forest Lane in 2009 were convinced by the city council at the time that this would never be a problem again. The city council graciously praised our efforts then for the work we did and voted to close the firing range, which has remained closed until now. Most of what we presented to the council back then had to do with safety concerns, which remain relevant today, and I'll touch on that in a moment. Since then, the Haskell Pond Reservoir has become a jewel in the crown of Gloucester's open space plan, a magnet area for hiking, running, mountain biking, dog walking, birding, and mass motors with a wide network of beautifully marked and maintained trails, a parking area, and a trailhead kiosk. I myself walk there and hike there twice a week. But there are safety concerns, and I'd like to list some of them. There's no fencing or enclosure, no cell service at the site in case of emergencies. And there's unauthorized use by gun users, which was a major issue in 2009 and already starting to happen again this year. This was a huge problem back then and will be a huge problem again soon as the Gloucester police start shooting, which means every time we hear unauthorized shooting, the police department will receive calls from our neighborhood. A cruiser will be dispatched and arrive after an hour or so, only to find that the shooting has stopped and the transgressors have departed. How does the city of Gloucester propose to deal with this level of risk to the public? That's an important question for us. There are also multiple access points, including Forest Lane, Red Rocks, and Manchester Woods Road, which makes it nearly impossible for the city of Gloucester to control and protect hikers and bikers in close proximity to the firing range. Again, how does the city of Gloucester propose to deal with this level of risk to the public? There are so many people now hiking and biking in that area. There's also quality of life concerns. The noise levels that are distressing and not limited to the noise levels, which are distressing and not limited to Forest Lane, but include more than 300 households in a 1.5 mile radius. There are also PTSD concerns for veterans. In the 11 years since the range was last operational, shooting has taken on new meaning and created heightened anxiety in teachers and students, which I'm sure you'll hear more about later in this event tonight. And many of us in the community are working from home, and there's no escaping from this noise. And of course, the sound of gunfire is stressful for pets and livestock. Then there are the financial concerns. The police serve the entire city of Gloucester, but only one neighborhood is being forced to shoulder this burden. Yet there are alternatives. For example, Chief Connolly estimated that for the Gloucester Police Department to train at Fort Devens, it would cost as much as $50,000 a year. Okay. If we divide this by Gloucester's 30,000 residents, it would cost $1.60 per resident. This is only one of many ideas you'll hear tonight. There's also the problem of decreased property values. Real estate research shows the value of homes near a shooting range will decrease by a minimum of 3.7%. So if you multiply that by 300 homes which are affected, you have the idea. Finally, the new ordinance was passed unanimously with insufficient notification to the community and fails to consider alternative means of achieving Gloucester Police Department state certifications. Again, we understand and appreciate the importance of the Gloucester Police Department's state mandated training requirements, and therefore we would like to discuss alternatives to this 2020 ordinance. Now, on a personal note, I just want to say this. I have lived in this neighborhood almost my entire life and love living in Gloucester and working in Gloucester, which makes me truly sorry to say that if the firing range is allowed to continue, we will be forced to sell our house. if anyone would buy a house with a firing range nearby and probably have to move out of Gloucester. The sound of gunfire is very loud and unnerving, something I could never get used to for 15 days in May, just when we're opening our windows in the spring, and 15 days in October, not to mention the possibility of every Wednesday through the summer. It's certainly worse than it was back in 2009, maybe because they were shooting in March when our windows were closed. I don't know. But thank you for your time and your attention. And I'd like to turn it over to my friend Jean Grobe and then to Amy Donnelly to take it further. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you, Nubar. 1 second here. So, did he say Amy Donnelly? Yes, right? All right. So, Amy, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think Nubar was asking that Jean speak next.
All right, well, hold on 1
that's
second.
okay.
All right, well, hold on 1 second. Jean, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. So,
All set?
yeah, name and address for the record. And just so you know, Nubar took up 7 minutes. So you guys have 8 minutes for the 15-minute opening statement.
Okay, I'll be quick. My name is Jean Grobe, 17 Lincoln Street in Gloucester, West Gloucester. We're pleased to have this time to provide background and detail on this issue, and we thank you so much. I'd like to thank Melissa Cox, Chief Conley, and Sean Nolan for organizing the October 7th meeting to discuss the firing range at the Haskell Reservoir. There were over 100 people at this meeting who were blindsided by the fire range ordinance change. I would particularly like to thank Sean Nolan for apologizing to the group for not doing a great job communicating the upcoming ordinance change to residents of Forest Lane and the broader West Gloucester community. Acknowledging that fact was really important, and it was really great of him to do that. We were all amazed that not one person at the October 7th meeting knew about this firing range reinstatement. We reviewed the minutes to March and April City Council meetings regarding the range. All the March meetings on the issue were continued to the next date for various reasons. But then the minutes from the April 6th contain language that states that plenty of interviews were held and that neighbors approved. It just seems clearly that this was not the case. And that said, it's time to move forward and allow the community to express concerns, and that is what brings us here tonight. Please listen carefully, and we ask you to consider rescinding the current ordinance and move forward, allowing community input on the issue to discuss alternatives to using this recreational and watershed area for a firing range. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. All right. So we're back to Amy. Amy, name and address for the record, please.
Amy Donnelly, 9 Sumner Street, couple houses closer than Nubar to the firing range site. So thank you everyone for your time. Thank you for listening to our concerns. What I'm hearing is that the conversation regarding the shooting range has been centering around this $50,000 savings. I'd like us to consider the cost of this savings. The shooting range is located at one of the many trailheads connecting the Gloucester, Essex, and Manchester woods. On more than one occasions, I have directed lost bikers near the range who have been entering from areas in Manchester. And I just do not believe there's any way to curtail the activities of residents of 3 towns. It's become a very popular place to be. It is beautiful. It has something for everyone. And I don't think anyone would agree that a tragic accident is worth a $50,000 savings. Another cost that is being offset by this $50,000 savings is the noise. Although we are living in unprecedented times, there is no guarantee our future is going to look anything like the past. People are confined to working at home. Many are not returning to a traditional office for the foreseeable future. Imagine holding a conference call with shooting in the background. I am a teacher at O'Malley Middle School here in Gloucester, and I can tell you that Our Gloucester students are currently learning remotely, either part-time, meaning part of every single day, or full-time because they have chosen the remote option. Shooting for 2 weeks in May and every Wednesday, which by the way is the remote learning day for the entire district, would be yet another disruption in our students' learning. I understand the need for police training, but one neighborhood should not shoulder the cost of training a department that serves the whole city. $50,000 is a small line item in a large city budget. The savings that is gained by opening a shooting range are not without cost. Our neighborhood's quality of life is greatly diminished by the shooting range if it goes forward. So I would appreciate that everyone sit back and take a closer look at what is being put forward in this ordinance. That the time is doubled from 2009. The hours are 9 to 4. There is no guarantees in the ordinance that outside agencies will not be using it. And a lot of the verbal assurances that we have gotten from the chief of police, which are great and I'm sure well-intended, if he leaves, there is no backup in that ordinance that says that shooting won't occur every Wednesday from 9 to 4 instead of just being to make up trainings. Even though we're told that realistically the shooting might happen only 9 to 12, in the ordinance it says 9 to 4. So this is what happened to us in 2009. There was a lot of verbal agreements that were not met. So I would like us all to revisit this ordinance and see what is actually committing us to. Thank you for your time. I know it's not easy working these conditions.
Thank you, Amy. Is there anybody else that would like, you've got 3 minutes left on your 15 minutes opening. Is there anybody else that you would like to have joined in with that? Because it's basically the standard for the rest of the meeting is 3 minutes. So, all right, with that being said, I will, let's see here. We have next, Charlie Crowley. Can you hear me, Charlie?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please. And 3 minutes for, 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. I'm not going to be too strict, but let's try to keep it toward 3 minutes. And I'll give you a little heads up when you get toward the mark.
Thank you.
Name and address.
Charlie Crowley, 19 Biscayne Head Point.
Thank you.
I think a lot of you know that for about the past 15 years, I was on the Open Space Committee. I was chairman for the past 3. I resigned about a few months ago, just really over frustration over this exact kind of issue that we're having tonight. We worked for about 15 years to get better access to that area, the backside of Haskell's Reservoir. It's a whole lot of city land. It's a very beautiful area, and there's a ton of trails. Parking had been allowed on Forest Lane, but then when the rifle range first went in, parking was banned and people were being towed. So people would go and run or bike or whatever, and their cars were either ticketed or towed. And so in the 2007 open space plan, that was one of the big kind of goals. Let's get access, let's get parking. Sean Nolan can attest that when he first came in, boy, there were testy meetings with neighbors and all this to get parking there. We finally agreed to have the parking on Forest, sort of far out on the end of Forest Street by where the little skating pond is there. And that was fine. That took about 10 years to get that darn thing put in. I've worked with now 4 city council members to get that put in. We finally got it put in. To get the trail, to get that all to go, the chief of police had to sign on. The chief of police said, the one thing you got to do is have a marked trail around there so it's safe. So Nick Holland from Cape Ann Trail Storage, myself, and Larry Durkin, the watershed engineer, we walked around there. We came up with a trail. So currently there is parking and a trail. And God, who would have wished a pandemic? But geez, now that that pandemic is there, that parking area is full. And you go out there, I mountain bike out there. I've done it for 15 years. I never saw anybody. Now there's everybody. And I wish we weren't doing this on Zoom, because I wish we could just all go out there and walk and kind of see what the particulars are of the area. The problem is that right where the rifle range is where the trail goes up and goes around the backside of Haskell's. And that's been agreed upon. We worked through the city process. We did it. and it's very popular. The problem is the rifle range obviously goes right through that. And the proposal is that that's to be fenced off and everything. So that will all be closed. So I guess you could say, well, maybe we could come up with another place to put a trail. That presents some problems because that trail would have to go up beforehand. So that trail would have to go right up the pipeline, which is the area that the mass mudders use. And so we have deliberately tried to keep kind of conflict down, have the hikers over in one area, the mass mudders in another. If we do that, I can guarantee you the mass mudders issue is going to be coming before you soon. So we worked that all out. So from the access side, I could say maybe we could come up with another trail. The problem is that people are accessing it from the other side, from Essex. They come through because that's the trail network goes quite a ways down. So people come into that and they come to the top of that dam. And what do? They have to go take that trail that goes down along the dam right to the rifle range. Without that, they have to go back and go a whole lot of miles back around the dam the other way. That's just the geography. And again, I wish we could do this where we could all look together and see what the problem is, but there really is a problem. And you know, unfortunately, Zoom is not the best place to deal with this. But again, I want to just reiterate, as a committee member, as a committee chair, this is something we worked on for a long time. We got full city buy-in on this. You know, Sean and Nolan was a great help to have this happen. So I guess what I don't understand is why, at this point, why do we have to do what we always do in Gloucester? Take one step forward and go 2 steps back. I wish we'd just stop and look at this and kind of reassess. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it. And I let you get up to about 4 minutes.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry.
No, not a problem. You being in the circuit for so long, we wanted to hear from you. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Up next, we have Stephen Noel. Stephen.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, no problem. Name and address for the record once again, please.
Sure. Steve Noel. I'm at 567 Essex Ave.
Thank you. Go ahead.
West Gloucester. And so that's the corner of Sumner and 133. So I've been a resident for about 3 years now, 3 years this February, and I love it here. You know, one of the questions I did ask my realtor when I bought this house was, is there anything negative in the neighborhood, like a dump or anything that would detract from value? And the realtor, you know, no kidding, said in 2009, there was a shooting range, but that's gone. And I couldn't believe it when I was sitting at my desk and heard gunshots. You know, Gloucester only has 3.7 square miles of open space. That's number 159 out of 351 towns in Massachusetts. So only 13.7% of the total space in Gloucester is open space. We need to preserve as much as we can. And, you know, when it comes to open space, once the genie's out of the bottle, there's no putting it back in. Or so we thought in 2009 from all my neighbors who fought so valiantly to fight the good fight. You know, aside from that, you know, were other alternatives looked at for other solutions? For instance, Los Angeles and New Jersey, they had a similar problem. And what they did is they created a 53-foot indoor mobile range that could be used by multiple towns. So if you think about Essex, Gloucester, Rockport, Ipswich, you know, they don't have to go to a range. The range goes to them. It's quiet, it's safe, it's convenient for the officers that don't have to go down to, you know, Devon's. And yeah, it's expensive, but the 50 grand that we spend and those other towns combined together could be a shared resource. And I'm wondering what other types of solutions were looked at rather than just going back to the old solution, which was wrong in 2009 and hasn't, you know, changed. I mean, what's different that made it a bad idea in 2009 that makes it okay today? So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. But I love the area, and I'm proud to be a West Gloucester resident. And yeah, that's it.
All right, Steve. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks again.
Sure thing.
All right. Up next, we have Peter. Peter, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, Pete Rodosha, 259 Concord Street.
Thank you. And if, I'm not sure if it's just me, but you're very soft spoken. So maybe if you want to speak up, because I'm having a hard time just hearing you. So I don't know if it's just my microphone, but we want to make sure that you are heard. So if you can speak up just a little bit, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
That's a lot better. Thank you.
Okay. Appreciate the time and just want to follow up. One of our nephews is a police officer in Haverhill. Very supportive of the police, understand the need to train. Just so you know, Haverhill goes to Fort Devens, okay? Couple things. Back in the fall, when we heard the gunshots, we had no idea where they were coming from. We realized it was coming from Haskell Street Reservoir. We became concerned for the following reasons. One, I mountain bike a lot. We hike, we have a dog, we run up there a lot. Charlie, a lot of people elaborated a little bit about the trail system. There are multiple ways to get into that area. It's impossible to be able to, if you would, clear the area or let everybody know that's in the area what's going on until they hear the gunshots, especially if you're on a mountain bike and you're flying through. A lot of the times people listen to music. They may not even hear the gunshots, and you can be on that area very quickly on a bike. One of the things that nobody has brought up is the conservation issues there. If you've gone up there and looked at where Haskell Pond is, the city spent a whole bunch of money, I think it was the city, to put in and redo that area so that there's an overflow and it flows down and in. I was really surprised because we've dealt with a lot of environmental issues based on our property, that the city was able to just go in there, dump some piles of dirt without silt fences, without going through Concom, doing whatever they want. And that water carrying all the sediments actually comes down towards our property because it all drains into the bay. So it's a beautiful area. It needs to be protected, I think. And people are in there all the time. We don't want to really have to worry about it being shot at or stray things happening. Not to mention, I didn't even think about people going in there unlawfully. Mentioned about other towns have the same problem. We know that. One of the things that I did find out about that I wasn't aware of, there's a gun range at the police department upstairs that when we found out that it was there, because the city had actually paid money to set it up and use it, it's actually being used, I think, as a storage area now. And maybe some of the shooting could be done in that if it was actually reactivated. I never really got into doing any research on what could be done there, but that's something to look at. I really appreciate you folks giving us the opportunity to voice our concerns. Again, like others had said, we were really unaware of what was going on until we actually heard the gunshots. So appreciate all you could do to hear our concerns. We'd love to work together with you for a resolution that we all think would be better. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate your comments. All right, up next we have Grant. Grant, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Steve. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Sure thing. My name's Grant Clark. I live at 279 Concord Street. And with your permission, my wife is here with me and she'd like to follow my comments if that's okay.
Absolutely. We'll give you 3 minutes and then we'll give her 3 minutes. How's that?
Great. I won't use 3 minutes.
Okay.
We live at 279 Concord Street, which is probably at the outer edge of that 1.5 mile radius that was mentioned earlier. And when the range is in operation, I can tell you that we can hear it very clearly. It's loud, it's present. You can hear it with the windows shut. So the degree of travel for this range and the weaponry that's used there is really quite extraordinary. I assume it also affects people in Essex rather heavily as well. The only other comment I'd like to make is that if you look at the intense usage in spring and fall, and then the possibility of several Wednesdays throughout the summer, however many that may be, you really start to look at the potential for 50 days of prime usage of that recreational facility being off limits to an increasing number of people. And I would say on a really nice day, you're going to see in excess of 100 people using that facility in a single day easily. We would like to see some kind of rationalization of that level of use with the certification and staffing requirements of Gloucester PD. Again, I think everyone on this call is fully supportive. We understand the need for training and we support it, but it feels potentially excessive given the size of the department and what we understand about the certification requirements. And one final note, regardless of how many days of that 50 plus are being used, scheduling is a real issue, because up to now, a message will pop up, if at all, on Facebook the morning of, and it makes planning almost impossible. You know, you just kind of check Facebook in the morning and maybe there's a notice on there. I've gone down there when there was no notice and frankly, the range was in use. So those are just some random concerns, but we'd appreciate it if you'd take a look at those. And I'll yield to my wife, Diana, now, who has some additional comments on potential alternatives.
All right, great, thank you. Diana, can we have your name and address for the record, please?
Sure. Diana Clark, 279 Concord, Gloucester.
Thank you, go right ahead.
I happen to agree with every single person that's spoken here on both sides. I think that firearms training is one of the most important things for a police officer. And we need to figure out how best to do that. And I look at this particular firing range that they would like to use now and say, it's kind of silly because it doesn't give them what they need. They need alternatives to look at to train properly. You can't just shoot at a range that they're looking at all the time. They need to be doing different kinds of maneuvers and things like that. So I was looking at alternatives for them. And of course, Chief Conley did mention Fort Devens, but I'd like to look at something that's even more different than that. And that is what's happening in Lexington. Lexington wants to put an incredible facility, both indoor and outdoor. They do have an outdoor range right now, but they also want to add an indoor. However, they cannot do it on their own. And one of the places that they recommended trying to look at, they did a feasibility study, was the Northeast Municipal Law Enforcement Council SWAT team for 63 Middlesex and Essex County agencies. They really would like our police officers to use their facility. And so they've started their grant process. They are looking for input. And what I'm looking for is their annual town meeting of 2020. And their reasonable fees that they would be charging are way less than what Chief Connolly was talking about for Fort Devens. I really think that this is a terrific possibility where they could have all the facilities, the best of everything possible, if they would just look at the alternative and not keep this a narrow issue of just Haskell Range. So that's my input.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Appreciate your comments. All right, is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor or in opposition? All right, we have Ann. Ann, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Name and address for the record, please.
Ann Stevens, 10 Winter Haven Road, West Gloucester.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So I also want to thank you all for listening to all these concerns that the neighbors have. I'm one of the neighbors of the shooting range and was also very surprised to see that the ordinance about the shooting range had changed so drastically and with so little notification in April. And I just want to ask the city council members, all of you, to please go to the site, look at it, walk around, walk on the trails, and see how this shooting range setup is totally unprotected. I mean, except for the one side, which is the dam. It's right in front of the dam of the reservoir, but it's open on the other three sides. And there's no gate, there's no fence, no barrier. And I've only seen a couple of small 8x11, flyers that just have some basic information about it. I'm just shocked that there aren't bigger signs, more signs, that there isn't some kind of perimeter marking. There's so many children, there's so many families, school groups normally walking around that area, and they all feed through that space because that's where a couple of the trails start. They feed to the parking, they feed to other, each side of the reservoir. And if people enter from Manchester or Essex, which many do on their bikes or running or hiking, they all feed down to that front of the reservoir, and it's wide open, and it's just unbelievably unprotected and unsafe. So I just really implore you to go and look at the site and give this some more time and thought, and try to find more alternatives, try to figure out how to make either this more safe and have less use and impact, or find other alternatives for the training that is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And just for the record, there was several counselors that went out and toured the site this week or over the weekend. And the rest of us have been out there. So just wanted to get that out there because we have gone out to review the site. Next, we have Jenna. Jenna, can you hear me?
Hi, this is actually Jonathan James.
There you go, Jonathan. Name and address for the record, please.
James, 21 Forest Lane.
Thank you.
So I am the most direct butter to it. I'm at the end of the road there. And I just want to say that, every day I go out to work and I come back and I drive past that parking lot, sometimes multiple times. And it, honestly, in the shoulder seasons, that thing is packed anytime you go by, almost from 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, right till dark every single night. Me and my wife and my son and my dog, we walk it almost every single day. It gives us an opportunity to go and unwind from the world. And, we walk 2 miles down and 2 miles back, all the way down to the end of the reservoir. And we're not being able to use that as much. And I got to say, it's a valley kind of in between as you drive down. Basically, there's 2 hillsides, and the sound just comes piping down here. And it blows us out with the windows and doors shut. If they're shooting their AR-15s down there, it is extremely loud to the point that you have to turn up. If you're watching TV or something, you literally need to turn up the TV to listen. So I'm just very disappointed that I wasn't even notified. I had to find out through Facebook. So I didn't even have the first chance. So I appreciate this meeting. But it's affecting me and my family. And, to the point that if this thing goes through, we are contemplating selling our house because it's such an effect. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it. All right. Up next, we have Robin. Robin, can you hear me?
All right, hold on a second, please.
We got you. Name and address for the record, please.
Robin Hosking, 20 Forest Lane. I
Sure.
live about a half a mile from the shooting range. I've lived here for 20 years with my family. My young son has always enjoyed riding his mountain bike through the trails. I can attest, like everyone else can, that the parking lot is filled. This is a great asset to our community, especially during COVID, like other people have said, that, you know, recreation, of course, reduces stress, and you have less stress in a community, you have a happier, healthier community, and healthier as far as physical exercise, of course, as well. The shooting range is, it's unbearable. I remember the last time that it was in operation, my son was 6 years old. It was traumatizing for him. You know, I would have to take him away from the neighborhood. Now the noise is actually worse, and it's going to be more frequent, apparently. For me, when it first started this year, I was out gardening. So imagine just like peacefully gardening, your mind sort of wandering, and all of a sudden there's gun blasts. It's traumatizing. My stomach gets in knots for the whole time of the shooting. It is completely awful. It is an awful thing. And once again, like everyone else, I appreciate your time. And I think there's so many other options. And one point that no one's mentioned is, as far as the reduction of price, market value of real estate in the area, to put, you know, who would want to volunteer to live with something like that going on? You know, I think that everybody within those 300 houses should apply for a reduction in their tax rate because their value of their house has gone down so dramatically. And I think that would probably be more than enough of a deficit, that would be more of a deficit than the $50,000 to find an alternative. Thank you very much.
Robin, thank you. We appreciate it. Up next, we have Heidi. Heidi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
How are you doing? Name and address for the record, please.
Great. Heidi Wakeman, 7 Wise Place.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to identify myself as the current chair of the Open Space and Recreation Committee. And I am not speaking with one side or another, but I'm listening. And I've heard a lot, and I appreciate the time and energy people have put into this. And we will be bringing this up during our next meeting next week. So just wanted to identify and say thank you. I know some of the names and some I do not. And that's all I have to say, but it's clearly an issue that is important on many levels, including open space, recreation, and our beloved city of Gloucester. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Heidi, and congratulations on your new title.
You're welcome.
Take care. Up next, we have Gitama. I'm sorry if I butcher your name, but Gitma?
Gitama.
Gitama. I am sorry, but good old Gloucester. At least it's not that bad of a Gloucester accent, but I apologize for that. And name and address for the record, please.
My name is Gitama Kinnickstein. I live at 18 Forest Lane. So I don't really have much to add because I think everybody has pretty much stated many things. I was a little unclear about the woman who was talking about Lexington, whether the piece of property that she was referring to that was available for different communities to share was actually located in Lexington or where it was located. But at any rate, that sounded like an interesting possibility. I mean, I spend a lot of time outside, and both in terms of gardening, and I also meditate and teach meditation outside. And you know, the quality of life is really compromised by having the sound of guns shooting. That's all I can say. The last time that we had the range here, I remember my family happened to be visiting and they just like, what is that? You know, it's just, I think everyone has stated how it impacts on our quality of living. And I just wanted to state that. Thank you.
Thank you,
And I
Gautama.
do appreciate, of course, the need. I also want to say that I also was unaware of this shooting range to be reactivated, and only recognized that that was happening when I saw the DPW trucks dumping dirt in front of the dam, and then found out what they were doing. And I feel like I should have been notified, as I am also in a butter right here on Forest Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, Gautama. Appreciate your comments. All right, up next we have Debbie.
Yes,
Name and address for the record, please.
Debbie Holland, 11 Jebbica Lane, Gloucester.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I too agree with all the arguments and points that have been put forward. I was kind of disturbed. I've written to all of you and gotten responses from some. And one of the responses I got was that the chief would see to it that a shooting range would only be used by police officers, to which I don't see any accountability. There's no plan. The city council has no way of limiting that use. And should you make the very unfortunate decision to keep this shooting range in West Gloucester, I think it would behoove you as a city council to set up some accountability standards for non-police use so that we don't get back into the problem we had years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate your comments. And there it is written in the ordinance that it is for police use only. Somebody breaking the law, if we're able to catch them, they will be prosecuted. And I don't mean to use this analogy, but speeding is against the law and people do it too. So it's just hard to catch everybody breaking every law. But this ordinance does state clearly that this is for police use only and nothing else. So I just wanted to put that out there for you. All right. Up next, we have Andre. Andre, can you hear me? Oh, hello, Andre.
Are you Andrew Innes? I'm Andrew Innes.
Andrew, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, name and address for the record,
Sure.
please.
I'm Andrew Innes, and I live at, excuse me, 6 Old Bray Street. I've lived here for 47 years of my 39-year-old life. My wife and I have done a lot to preserve this old property. It is the old Bray house, and that accrues to the benefit of the entire community. And this was originally along this creek, a 300-year-old colonial community. And you can go around, you can see all the colonial houses and then subsequent Victorian and so on. It's a beautiful community. We can travel from the Atlantic Ocean to the top of Hardy Mountain in a beautiful walk in this neighborhood. Anyway, I've sent all of you the cost to this community in an email, so I won't go through all of them. But the other one person was saying, well, if we did an analysis, what would happen? Well, there's going to be cost to us in terms of our property values. And in turn, there'll be costs to the city in terms of the revenues they receive. And my analysis shows that it will be a cost yearly of around $71,000 to the city in lost value. If we say our lost value was 3.7%, but this is in the email. So in essence, if we're talking about 50,000 to go to Devon's, we're talking about a 71,000 loss to the city in tax revenues. So thank you very much.
Mr. President, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate your comments. Mark, up next, Mark, do we have, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can we have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Mark Poulin, 84 High Pauples Road. My name was on the consent agenda earlier, hopefully fulfilling the unexpired term of Charles Crowley, the Open Space Committee. I've been listening to this tonight, and there's some, I don't want to weigh in at this moment. I still have to, I have a couple questions though. I don't always trust the Gloucester Daily Times, but they did say that it was police and retirees. And the earlier, Councilor LeBlanc, you said that it was just police. So is it police and retirees or just police?
It is
Active duty
police and retirees, because we do use retired police officers for certain things still. So once you're a police officer, like the mayor said, once you're a police officer, you're always a police officer.
Of course, I heard that. I heard that earlier. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
No problem. Is that all?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor or in opposition? Joanne, can you hear me?
Hi, I'm Joanne Castano. I
Yes.
live at 6 Old Gray Street in
Thank you.
Gloucester, Mass. And I just want to, it's so nice to see all the counselors. I've in the past gone to many, hi, Scott. I've gone to many city council meetings. I've worked with many of you. And this is actually the first city council meeting I've gone to online. And I just want to say how much I appreciate all the work and everything you've done. It's so good to see you all. I almost feel like it's normal, even though it's not. I just want to say something that wasn't mentioned that I heard when I was at the meeting this summer, was that some people come in hiking from different areas. And if they came in not knowing about the shooting range and landed up at the shooting range and was sent back and they were late hikers, they would be walking back in the dark. There's that potential. And then I think about our children who are calling us and saying, oh, let's go up to the mountain. We've got to bring their children, our grandchildren up there. And we have to say no. And it's a tradition. You're taking away the soul and I just get, I mean, I've come to this meeting, my heart's been beating, pounding ever since I turned this on. And if we should go against, because of a lousy $50,000, and we've gone through this over and over on so many other issues of how we're trying to adapt to the needs of Gloucester and the people of Gloucester, I beg of you, think of the people and the neighborhood. And what we're trying to tell you tonight, save our spaces for us, especially during a pandemic. How can you take this away from us for shooting after what we saw this last week? Don't do it to us. I beg you. But all in all, I love you all and thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Joanne. We appreciate the call. And hopefully we can start doing these live meetings again soon. This is
Great.
This isn't normal. It isn't.
And thanks, neighbors, for speaking up.
I appreciate it. And I just wanted to clarify one quick thing with that last caller about retired police officers. They would still have to abide by the ordinance and get permission from the chief to be able to participate in that. So it's not like the retired officers would be up there shooting at their free will. So just to clarify that also. All right, up next we have Marianne. Marianne, can you hear me?
I can, thank you. Marianne Boucher, 93 Mount Pleasant Avenue.
Good.
I listen to most meetings, as you probably know, as you can see my name. I am going to echo what that last woman just said, save our spaces. We're losing one now. We're losing a very important piece of open space right now as we speak that you all know about. And here I'm listening again to people in another neighborhood begging you to save their open space. During a pandemic, we need these open spaces more than ever. It's vital to the health and happiness of neighborhoods, of people that live in them. And I just want to voice my appreciation for all of the people that are willing to get up and speak. As a resident of Gloucester, I think that more people need to speak up and speak out. We are losing spaces left and right every single day. And we're changing the dynamics of our city. And to me, it's very disappointing. So thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Marianne. Appreciate your comments. All right, up next, we have Dennis. Dennis, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Name and address for the record, please.
Dennis McGurk, 283 Concord Street.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Quick comment that I've brought up at other situations of building in Gloucester, and you know, the Gloucester zoning ordinance itself, which should be a guide for what you're doing. One of the key elements of it is to preserve the character of the neighborhoods, preserve the natural resources and the environment. But throughout that, the zoning ordinance and all the other plans of the city, open space plans, is very clearly their priority for your predecessors looking to the future was to preserve the character of the neighborhood. Gunfiring in the neighborhood is not a preservation of the neighborhood. It's not what the neighborhood is intended for, particularly, it doesn't matter where. West Gloucester is a quiet community. Say people like to live and by themselves and have peace and quiet. That's why we're here. Not that you can do it in the city either. You need to find a place to do that that doesn't affect people's lives. The sound of gunshot, I'm not a veteran. I'm glad I'm not. I'd probably be under the desk whenever I heard the gunshot. It's a horrible sound to hear. And whether it's a Sunday afternoon, whatever, we got a neighbor here that shoots once in a while. It's a terrible sound. It reverberates around the marsh in the neighborhood. And again, if you go back to your zoning ordinance and what the ordinances are telling you, is you need to preserve the character of the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate your comments. All right. We have Cedar Rock Gardens. Cedar Rock Gardens, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, this is Elise Smith, 21 Bray Street.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I'd like to echo what I've been hearing here in this meeting. We own a business here in this neighborhood. We have a farm. And it is a nice, quiet, very serene place that we have business. We have customers that are coming all the time. And I want to echo what our neighbors are saying. I highly agree that this shooting range should not go on Haskell Lane. And I just want to say that I do believe that it'll affect our business and it'll affect how people feel when they come shop with us.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. All right. Is there anybody else that would like to speak in favor or in opposition? If you are calling in on a telephone, you can press *9 to be recognized to speak. If you are watching on a computer or a device, there is a raise hand button to be recognized to speak. Anybody else in favor or opposition? All right, seeing none. Madam Clerk, do we have any communications?
Yes, we do. We have several communications, and some of them have been submitted and distributed to you, and have the constituents have spoken here tonight. Jean Grove, in behalf of the citizens of West Gloucester, Joanne Castano, Debbie Holland, Andrew Enos, twice his communications, different concerns. Lorraine Cicchetti, her concerns about the West Gloucester firing range, and Jane Gagliardi. And you all have received these communications in your packet.
Thank you, Joanne. Any councilor questions? Councilor Holmgren and then Councilor Pat.
I have several questions for Chief Conley. I'm not going to ask them all at once, but I guess I'd like to start with whether or not there's going to be a community or neighborhood oversight group. I had heard something about that a few months ago. And also I do appreciate, Chief Conley, by the way, you're demonstrating to me on Sunday evening exactly where officers will be positioned at the dam, to show people exactly what's happening, to give them a heads up, signage that will be posted when the target practice will ensue seasonally. But what will be done in the way of giving neighbors notice when target practice is scheduled to start? And will there be a community oversight group? Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you, counselors, for having me here tonight. Mr. President, thank you very much for your leadership on this issue. And I just want to say to everybody that's listening now that I've been on the call since the beginning. I've listened to everybody's comments, whether they were for it or against it. So, and I've taken a bunch of notes here, and I take that all very seriously. Counselor, to answer your question, I've early on offered as by way of communicating with the neighborhood and local stakeholders, my openness to form an advisory committee of so many people that we meet maybe once or twice a year, and also being able to use that advisory committee as a way to communicate with the neighborhood. Right now, how we communicate with the neighborhood is through our social media sites, which are pretty extensive, and on our website when we're preparing to shoot. But of course, now the ordinance kind of gives those windows when we would be able to shoot. So I would encourage anybody that's interested in knowing that information, and that's kind of the time they want to check out certainly our social media.
Council Holmgren, any more questions?
Yes, but I'll wait. Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you,
Councilor
Chief.
Pett, you had a question?
Yeah, well, I have a question, but I'd also like to add some commentary. I did.
Barry,
go
just
for
this is the, hold on one second. This is just councilor questions right now. So we'll hold the comments till after the public hearing part of it. We'll be able to comment on it, but right now it's just questions.
Yeah. So my question to Chief Conley is, my understanding is that this is going to be limited to Gloucester police, whether that be active duty, retired, or whatever. Is that correct in the way you plan on running this range?
That's absolutely correct. Yes, Counselor.
Thank you.
Councilor Gilman.
Thank you. Chief Conley, this is a question for you in terms of how many folks or how many officers typically would need to do the Wednesday makeups. Do you have any data from this past year in terms of people that, officers that have missed the primary sessions?
So I have, Counselor, just based on, and this is, just based on rule of thumb, over the past year, we've had 10 to 20 officers based on different things that have needed to make up time during the week that didn't fall into the scheduled 2-week period of training. That's not a great number to go by because, for example, just moving into this upcoming year, we have new reserves coming out of the academy. They require us to take them out and conduct marksmanship training and guidance governed by the state guidance. That ends up being a problem, certainly with COVID and people's family situations. They're not able to make the traditional times always, and that might increase that number somewhat. But so it's a very difficult, but 10 to 20, I think is a fair number to say.
Thank you.
Councilor Gilman, anything else?
I do, but I was trying to ask only one question.
Okay, we'll get back. We'll make another circle back. No problem. Councilor Nemhard.
Yes, just following up, Chief Conley, thank you very much. Could you just outline broad brush for the people listening in and for the council, the requirements of your training and the number of officers that you have, plus the retirees who will be taking advantage of or required to use this training? And what does that total up to in the course of a typical annual year? That would be helpful.
When you say, Council, when you say total up, you just mean in total numbers or in costs?
I'm trying to understand the impacts on the neighborhood specifically. So the number of officers, active duty and retired, I've heard about twice a year to maintain certain licensure and experience. What the total typical usage in your perspective is likely to be?
Right. So thank you, Council, for the question. So we have 74 active sworn members of the department that need to qualify twice a year according to the Massachusetts Training Council standards. That's a minimum standard. We typically do that in 2 8-day periods. That's how long it takes us to kind of go through. We don't shoot on the weekends for the most part. It's a Monday through Friday thing. And then in terms of the retirees, that's going to fluctuate, right? Because we just set in some new guidance around age limits and requirements, and we certainly are anticipating some retirements in the coming year or so. But I would say there's just an additional 3 retirees, and they're not required to qualify twice a year at this time.
Chief, typical training is roughly how many hours? You're using different type of weapons? Is there a number of rounds? Is there a certain standard in terms of what this training entails and how long that amounts up to?
Correct. So it's typically 16 hours a year, a fiscal year for each officer. So 8 hours each iteration, once in the spring and once in the fall. I mean, that MPTC doesn't tell us when we have to do it. That's just how we plan it out. This past year at the end of the springtime, we kind of cut that down to 4 hours, just given COVID restrictions and trying to space that out. We did shorter iterations over more time to try to fit it in that way. But typically will be 8 hours per officer during those 2-week periods. And the MPTC requires us to fire each weapon that we have here at the Gloucester Police Department. So for us, it's our pistols, our sidearms, it's patrol rifle, and it's shotgun. Everybody has to qualify on all 3 weapons.
All set, Scott? Thank you. Any other councilor questions? Councilor McCarthy.
Good evening, Chief. Having a little bit of experience with this. Can you maybe explain this just isn't a cost issue. This is a scheduling issue. This is a protecting the public issue as far as you having adequate manpower. Your shifts run 8 to 4, 4 to 12. Just getting these people up to Devon's, the enormity of the equipment that you have to move. Can you just maybe describe having this in our area, what benefits it is to you?
That's a great question. Thank you, Council. And certainly given your experience, you know the answers to that, but I'll share that with everybody else, which is, having control of own area. Down off of Forest Lane Range, there's a storage area that's a pump house. We're able to store equipment there. That means that we're able to make more space in the limited space here we have at the PD. We have 6 firearms instructors. Those 6 instructors are certified annually by the Massachusetts Training Council, Police Training Council, and are certified not only to teach firearms, but also to run a firing range. So because we have that control, they work for the PD, we control their schedules, we control what they do. They in turn also take ownership and control of that firing range. That allows us to do all kinds of things during the shift. So by that, I mean, if we have instructors that are working their regular shift, it's not a big deal for them to take some time and go down there and prep for upcoming training, to prepare the equipment, to prepare the range, to inspect the range, all these sort of things that are done, these small ancillary things that ultimately add up to costs. Whereas if we have to travel, whether it's Devon's or another location, we lose total control over that. I'm going to have to send, a number of instructors, probably not 6, but maybe 1 or 2 or 3, maybe a day or 2 out ahead of time. Typically, there's a lot of paperwork to be signed. There's preparation for the range. There's class. Sometimes ranges require you to go through a refresher class for their particular range. And on the back end, you usually have to turn the range back over. I know in Devon's, being a military type range, and there's all kinds of requirements around that. In fact, you're not allowed to open a range or to close a range until range control gets out there. And on Fort Devon's, there are any number of ranges, not just one. So you're kind of on their timetable. So we lose control. And when we lose control over that, we lose control of our costs. I think that's the primary, to me, that's one of the primary reasons why it makes a lot of sense for us to keep that here in Gloucester.
Thank you, Chief.
John, any other councilor questions? I'll circle back around. Councilor Gilman?
Thank you, Counselor. Chief, I have an additional question. So have we considered regionalizing this training? So possibly we would partner with like Manchester, and maybe we would just do the spring and they could do the fall, and same hours, and possibly send those makeup folks to Fort Devens, the individual 10 to 20. That wouldn't be anywhere near that expense and the inconvenience if it was just a handful of officers, and so the hit would be once for a 2-week period, and we'd welcome Manchester, for example, as just one example, or others. It's just a thought, but have we considered that at all?
So before the chief answers that, Val, I think the ordinance states that it's for Gloucester Police. I think the ordinance, if the chief wants to,
No,
so regionalization would require an ordinance change to.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah.
Okay.
I was just asking. It
Okay,
just,
yeah, if you can
It's just
proceed
a
with your
thought.
question, I just wanted to give you the logistics of that
right, no,
question also.
the ordinance definitely says Gloucester resident. I understand. But
Um,
I'm just brainstorming, I guess. I'm not trying to put you on the spot if you don't want to answer that. That's,
I mean, I'm uniquely qualified to answer that question, since prior
I
to being
know.
the police in Manchester by the Sea, where I spent a lot of time doing exactly this, about reopening their range that was in Manchester, which had been closed similar or suspended, similar to the way that the range here had been suspended, and for the same exact reasons. It was overused, it was abused, and it had a big impact, and it required me to take a whole look at their operations, which I did, and I set in place a lot of standard operating procedures on range control, and I made promises to the neighbors of what it would be used for, and to this day, that's still the case. But to answer your question, notwithstanding the ordinance being a violation of the ordinance, I could tell you that that probably wouldn't fly. Because every community, every chief I talk to that's trying to either establish a range or reopen a range is facing the same type of issues. And regionalization, like someone asked me that at the open meeting about regionalization, and I said, yeah, it's a great idea, but they'd want us to build it here in Gloucester. So that's the answer. Hopefully that answers your question.
yeah. And Counselor, can I just ask one more question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So is it just not impracticable to revisit the shooting location at the police department? Is that just, that has storage stuff in it right now? Is that just not?
Well, the reason it has storage stuff in it, because that's about is what it's good for in terms of safety. It's hasn't been maintained for many years. So Council McCarthy could even speak more about that than I could. There's, we've been shooting lead up there for a very long time. I doubt that the air handle is, I'm not comfortable. I know Council McCarthy wasn't very comfortable when he was the chief of utilizing that area for safety reasons. And we'll find there's other, I won't take anybody's time tonight to talk about, but there's other training opportunities to use that space for that don't involve live fire.
Okay, great. Thank you. My questions have been answered. I appreciate it. Thank you, Counselor.
Steve, you're on mute.
I'm sorry about that. Did you have your hand up, Councilor Cox?
I did.
Okay, Councilor Cox and then Councilor Holmgren. We'll just circle it back around to you, Jen, after this. Good.
Before I get to my question, I just want to clarify what the new ordinance says. Any joint trainings involving the police, Gloucester Police, and other law enforcement agencies, and any state mandated trainings or qualification requirements that involve members of the Gloucester Police Department. So it does clearly say other law enforcement agencies are able to use the range per the one that was passed in April. So just a clarifying point on that. It's in Part B of Section 21-87. Chief, Were you aware of the Lexington facility possibly being closer to us than Fort Devens and buying into that? Were you aware of that in April?
I'm aware that only from the chief of Lexington and having been at a meeting where he discussed it, that they were trying to get buy-in in order to build it. Now, where that is, I have never received, nor has any chief, and I'm currently the president of the Essex County Chiefs of Police. I've not received any communication saying that that is open and available to anybody. I know that they were making a pitch to Lexington Board of Selectmen about it, but whether that's come to fruition, I have not received any updates on that. And I can tell you that that range was going to be primarily used for departments that are regional to Lexington and to the NEMLEC and SEMLEC regional reaction teams that are out there.
Of which we are part of. We're part of NEMLEC, correct?
We are a part of, but not for the department, only for the members that are assigned to the NEMLEC. For us, I think that we have 4, and then I'm a control chief for the SWAT team. So 5 members of NEMLEC.
Okay, thank you. And what other options were explored when it was discussed in April? Were there other regionalization possibilities discussed? Did we talk about the cost of those type things, versus Fort Devens?
Well, as I said before, Counselor, and I know you were with me when we discussed this at the live meeting at the range. Right now, what I'm seeing with my colleagues is that a lot of chiefs are having to, because of the additional requirements that are put on by the MPTC, and this is only within the last year or two, where you have to qualify twice a year, that they're going back and dusting off these old ranges because the cost is so prohibitive, and we lose control of the range and the ability to control the costs. I mean, the main costs anywhere we go are going to be 3 things. One is we have to reimburse officers miles back and forth round trip to include 6 instructors going out, no matter whose range it is. We have to provide the instructors. We have to provide all that support. They have to be paid to go out there beforehand, every single day of the training, and probably a day or 2 afterward to close out the range. There's also travel time, overtime, for which unions, according to collective bargaining agreements, receive minimum mandatories after certain periods of time that go into added costs. And then there's the extra overtime for the instructors, of course, to go out, as I stated, in addition to the miles back and forth. And there might be alternatives. I'm not aware of many alternatives, but either way, it's far more complicated, and not complicated in a way like it's a bad math problem we don't want to solve. I mean, complicated in a way that we lose. It'll be difficult for me to sort of estimate the cost of which, because so many variables are out of my control.
Right.
And when I threw that number out before, that's been brought up about the $50,000. That number is above and beyond. I just want to be clear. It's above and beyond the cost that we currently pay to shoot. And that number is a factor of those 3 things. It's a factor of the overtime, travel time, and that's a conservative estimate. And again, we're talking about Fort Devens because that's the easiest place to kind of get access to. And some of these other places that have regionalized counsel, there is a wait list to get in there. There's a lot of other departments that are falling into the same position we are.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Councilor Holmgren and then Councilor O'Hara.
Thank you very much. 2 more quick questions. Actually, well, one's really a comment on section B, because I looked at it, I've got the ordinance open as well, and it says, and other law enforcement agencies and any state mandated trainings or qualification requirements that directly involve members of the Gloucester Police Department. So I'm not a lawyer, but I would interpret that to mean that if there are other law enforcement agencies, that they are working in conjunction with Gloucester Police. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not aware of exactly what the intent of that was. I assume, just based on conversations we previously had, that there are circumstances where, for example, we've received training from the ATF that have come in as instructors to help teach our instructors prior to them teaching us. So like a trainer type of training, or there are circumstances where the state police firearms unit has come in, or the MPTC firearms unit has come in and they don't use the range for, they use it to train our trainers here. That's happened in the past. But I stand by my statement that I have no intention whatsoever of opening up this range to outside agencies to come down and shoot. If they're not directly supporting the Gloucester Police Department in some sort of training function, then that's not how I want that range used.
Okay, thank you, Chief. And one more, for the benefit of some constituents who brought up the watershed, and I do want to remind everybody who's listening in, this is public watershed. Anyway, that's a conversation for another time. But the bullets that are in use, do they have lead? And can you please just briefly tell us why or why not?
Sure. So the bullets that we use for target practice or qualification, better said, I do not contain lead because lead bullets tend to be more, first of all, they're more expensive. They're designed to do what to have the stopping power that a firearm is kind of built to do. We don't need that to put a round through a piece of paper and then judge accuracy. Now, don't get me wrong, the rounds that we're shooting are deadly. I mean, they are bullets, but they're not designed that way. And there are rounds today that have actually been around for quite a while that are environmentally friendly for shooting ranges, which ends up becoming a problem in every community. The idea of cleaning up a range after it's been used.
Thank you, Chief Conley.
Thank you, Jen. Councilor O'Hara.
Thank you. Chief, just out of curiosity, how many shots are fired? Say, as you said, you have 74 active and 2 or 3 retired. How many shots and they're qualified twice a year? Say 1 police officer, 1 qualification. How many shots would that police officer be discharging approximately?
So just kind of broad stroke would be 500, and that's going to vary it. And I'll tell you why, because there's a qualification course that we have to shoot, but just like anything, you don't want to just bring everybody in and say, hey, get online, we're going to shoot the qualification course. We're very fortunate here in Gloucester to have an outstanding cadre of firearms instructors within the PD, and they spend probably about two hours at the beginning of the day just doing some simple drills to get everybody comfortable, to get their head in the right place. So I would say 500 per person on average. Some people unfortunately need a few more rounds to kind of dial in, but on average, I would say 500.
So that's 500 times 2, qualified twice a year.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Anybody else? Councilor questions? Councilor Cox.
To clarify a point in the ordinance, it does say frangible ammunition when possible. So it is possible that you would use lead in shooting.
I'm not saying it's impossible. We have to meet this requirement annually. And I suppose there could be a time when frangible ammunition for any number of reasons is not available. And we have to be able to meet that requirement. So if that was the case, then I certainly would not sacrifice the safety of the officers and certainly of the public of trying to and put the city in a position of liability to suspend that mandatory training. I would definitely use whatever I could get my hands on. I'm unaware that those rounds are not available right now for us to utilize, so that's not a problem before me today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Any other councilor questions? Councilor Nolan.
Hi, it's for Ed. Just to go back on the joint training with the state and the ATF, I think the best basic question is, we're not inviting the Sheriff's Department, the Coast Guard, the SWAT teams from other cities. No one else is invited here. They're not going to be allowed to use it because that was a root problem back in 2009, and most of the disturbance was outside departments. So I think that with that being said, to bring it right out there, they're not going to be allowed to be here. It's against the law for them to be here unless they're working step and toe with you on a training situation.
100% correct, Counselor. That's not at all my intention. And again, I say I'm one of 3 control chiefs for the regional SWAT team. They're not going to come and shoot at our range. They've already been told that. And to be fair, Gloucester's quite a ride for a lot of people. So they're not really banging on the door. But in all seriousness, I went through this in Manchester by the Sea. I went over, I listened to the people that worked at the water treatment plant there. I stood inside the water treatment plant as they were firing, which is actually right next to the range there, right off of Route 128. And I completely understood what their complaints were and tried to find a common ground, how to mitigate that noise for them and also get the training, the minimum training we needed to get done in Manchester. And that common ground was being respectful and mindful of the type of environment people want to live in. And I plan on doing the same thing here. I'm not allowing any other outside agencies to come in here and use this range, other than the fact that a handful of outside instructors may in fact come and instruct our instructors prior to going downrange. So that's absolute.
All right, thank you, Chief. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I am going to close the public hearing. And once again, I'm going to announce that there is no action this evening for this item on the agenda. This is public hearing, a group petition that was before us this evening. If any councilors wish to change the ordinance, reach out to Joanne and put in a council order. And Barry, you said you wanted to make a comment. So we're going to do council discussion at this point too.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to comment that I, as most of you, have gone out and seen the range. I spent quite a bit of time with Chief Connolly there. And when I was in the service, granted this was quite a while ago, but I ran pistol ranges for .45 caliber. I ran rifle ranges for M16s, and I ran some much larger ordnance that's irrelevant here, etc. And I believe that the range as it's set up now can be a totally safe item for our officers to qualify on and still be under our community control. And I believe that with the assurances that the chief has given us, that I would support him running a totally safe facility for our community.
Thank you, Barry. Any other councilor comments before we wrap this part of the meeting up? All right, seeing none. Chief, I want to thank you for being here this evening, and it was a pleasure working with you and listening to answering our questions this evening.
Well, thank you to all you for the work you've done to help open up this conversation. And again, I'm very mindful of what I heard. I listened to everybody speak earlier today. And I take their input very seriously.
Thank you, and go home and spend the rest of the evening with your family, buddy.
Today was not the day to start fasting, I'll tell you that.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Thank you, Chief. All right, Madam Clerk, can we have the next order of business, please?
The next order of business is for council vote, decision to adopt Special City Council Permit 2020-005, Rocky Neck Avenue, number 37, map 130, lot 4A, Gloucester zoning ordinance sections 2.3.1.7, conversion to or new multifamily or apartment dwelling, 4 to 6 units, and section 3.2 dimensional tables, reduction in minimum lot area in open space per dwelling unit to create a fourth unit in the NB zone.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilor Gilman.
I move to adopt.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Gilman, seconded by Councilor Cox. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the roll call vote. Councilor Cox.
Yes.
Councilor Gilman.
Yes.
Councilor Holmgren.
Yes.
Councilor LeBlanc, yes. Councilor McCarthy.
Yes.
Councilor Memhard.
Yes.
Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor O'Hara,
Yes.
and Counselor Pat.
Yes.
Motion to adopt passes on a roll call vote of 9 in favor, 0 opposed. Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, we have the next order of business, please.
Is Councilor's request to the mayor.
All right. So I am going to start in no particular order, up to my left-hand corner, which is Counselor Cox, and then Counselor Gilman. Counselor Holmgren, I'm sorry. Counselor Cox and Counselor Holmgren.
I have nothing. Thank you.
Whoa, starting off the year on the right foot. Thank you. Counselor Holmgren and then Counselor Pat.
I want to thank everyone who participated for being here. These issues are tough to deal with, but I, for one, really appreciate community engagement, and I really hope to see more of your faces more often, especially as maybe hopefully someday we go to live meetings again in real life. And I also just want to remind everybody to mask up. We're all really tired of this virus, but it is not tired of us. So please stay safe, and thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Jen. Counselor Pat and then Counselor Memhard.
Just a thank you to all the counselors for helping for this first year for me as a new counselor. And thank you to not only all the counselors, the administration and everything for people working through this pandemic to try and stay as much of us and all of us as safe and healthy as we can, and hope we can continue doing that and get back to some sense of normalcy sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. Counselor Memhard and then Counselor McCarthy.
Yes, thank you, Steve. I'd just like to start with, I have two thank yous. One is to our Public Health Director, Karen Carroll. I think we're very fortunate to have her and her team helping us through this really challenging, unbelievable period. And I think we're so great, so fortunate, and I'm so appreciative of her hard work and long hours. I would also just like to say thank you for the Forest Lane and West Gloucester neighbors who came out this evening to advocate so clearly and passionately for their concerns about impacts in their neighborhood. I thought they did a really great job representing their concerns and advocating for them. And that's a wonderful example for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Counselor McCarthy and then Counselor O'Hara.
No request for the mayor. I'll echo what Scott said. I know it's tough to live in a neighborhood where you're hearing noise, but it's good that we were able to get this process done, and they worked hard to get their signatures. And I also want to thank Karen Carroll and her.
I think we lost Barry. Can anybody else hear? Can anybody else hear John? I can't. John, we lost you. Nope. I don't know if you can hear me. John, can you hear me? Yeah, we lost you for a little bit at the end there, John.
That's okay. I'm done.
Okay. All right. Counselor O'Hara, and then Counselor Nolan is no longer with us.
I just want to thank, as everyone has thanked Karen Carroll and everyone associated with keeping the city operational, keeping the children in schools. So important to have the children and their education. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. Counselor Cox, did you have something before we wrap it up, before Counselor Gilman and myself? Go ahead.
I would be remiss in not giving everybody an update on the fees. Jill Cahill and I are working together. We're meeting every Wednesday trying to figure out a fair and equitable way to do an economic recovery plan for all businesses, not just liquor licenses, or, we're trying to do something that's fair and equitable for all. So awesome. More to come out.
Yes, so if you get anything else before the next meeting, absolutely update us. We appreciate that.
Yep.
Thanks again, Councilor Gilman, and myself at the end.
Thank you, Counselor. I know the mayor is missing me these days, so I would like to request that we could have a brief planning session in including our CAO to begin the conversation about the quarry management for this summer. I've been getting a lot of questions from my constituents in Ward 4, not just Ward 4, from people all over the community as well, just asking when we can start that. So just like to put that on the radar. And I would also like to remind everybody about the drive-through for the open door this Saturday morning. I believe it's from 9 to 12. And piggybacking on what Karen Carroll asked us what we could do is just to communicate matters that might attach people to action in the open door and just generally what's happening. So I wanted to mention that. And then the final thing is I just wanted to take a moment to thank Vanessa Krozak, our interim CAO, for a job well done. She's been right there for us during this interim period. She battled really hard for a lot of constituent issues. She's incredibly conscientious, and we're just, it's a pleasure to work with her. So I just wanted to say thank you for your great work. Thank you all.
Thank you, Val. I want to echo what Val said about V. You're a rock star, and I'm looking forward to the future with you, and also looking forward to working with Nicole. We had a good conversation this afternoon. We had another little meet and greet, and we're going to help each other work with the council and through the mayor's office in the future. And so welcome, Nicole. A nice meeting to get your feet wet in. But that being said, we're looking forward to working with you. So feel free to reach out to any one of us at any time. And after talking to Nicole earlier this afternoon, she said the same thing. So if there's any counselors that would like to reach out to her, feel free. All right, if there's nothing else to be said this evening, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it was moved by everyone and it was seconded by everyone. All right, Councilor Cox.
Yes.
Councilor Gilman.
Yes.
Councilor Holmgren.
Yes.
Councilor LeBlanc. Yes. Councilor McCarthy.
Yes.
Councilor Memhard.
I'll say yes to that.
Councilor Nolan. No, Councilor Nolan's not here. Councilor O'Hara
Yes.
and Councilor Pat.
Yes, thank you.
Motion to adjourn passes on a roll call vote of 8 in favor, 1 absent. Great job, everyone. We'll see you on the other side. Thank you. Have a good evening.